Well, actually, let me just share a little bit of background about me. I was reflecting the other day when you said 30 years experience, and actually I figured out I've been leading for nearly 50 years. I led my very first team on stage at about the age of 6, and I don't know where the time has gone, but I feel like I've been leading ever since then. My professional career was in finance and telecommunications and IT, and much of that was leading significant change and transformation programs in Australia and internationally. And for about the last 15 years, I guess I've been working with some really well-known organisations to build even more leaders who can lead change and transformation effectively and successfully. And as Hima said, I'm a leadership expert. What I notice when I'm out working with CEOs and their teams is that it's often the fundamentals that actually prevent leaders from really stepping up into their leadership and getting to that place where they can really flourish, where they can inspire and influence and have impact. And so I'm obsessed with leading possibility. And what that means is I want to put leadership skills into as many hands as I can so that other leaders can lead in possibility, and as Hima said, create even more leaders. We are a world, particularly after 2020, that is crying out for even more leadership. And so I think as leaders, we all have a responsibility to elevate our own leadership, but also to create more leaders. And so what I want to do today is to share with you some ideas about how you can operate as leaders and help yourself and your tribes to step into the space, to create the foundations that allow you to step in the space where you can look to creating high performance, particularly in turbulence. I mean, we've been operating in a VUCA environment for years. 2020 is just that amplified. It's something that came out of the blue, and leaders have responded in different ways, but I think as the year has progressed, more and more leaders have turned to being much more strategic and action and oriented and decisive than they were earlier in the year, and that's a great sign. And what we need to do is to continue that. So as a starting point, what I would like you to think about is, I mean, these are Abraham Lincoln's words, but the best way to predict the future is to create it. So when you think about the next 12 months for you as a leader, and when I say leader, I mean you could be a leader of people, you could be a leader of an organisation, you can be a thought leader, a program leader, a leader in your community. There's so many different ways to be a leader. You can be a leader of self. When you think about your leadership and you think about the next 12 months, what do you want the narrative about your leadership to be? At the end of that 12 months, what do you want other people to be saying to you about you as a leader? It's quite a big question, isn't it? What's the legacy that you're going to leave over the next 12 months? And what do you need to do to position yourself to deliver on that? So I'm going to give you a minute actually right now just to make a couple of notes for yourself. What is the narrative you want for your leadership in the next 12 months? I'm just going to pop up my screen. There we go. I'm wondering, does anyone have any idea who this person might be? It's an American. I'll give you that much as a starting point. And I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know who he is. So maybe I should put you out of your misery. This is a gentleman by the name of Gene Kranz, and he was the NASA flight director during the Apollo 13 mission, where they had some fairly significant problems with the spacecraft that put the crew at extreme risk and meant that they couldn't land on the moon, which was the purpose of the mission. And what I love about this story, I'm a bit of a Apollo 13 kind of enthusiast. What I love about this story is that when faced with a situation that was not of their making, when faced with a situation that was unprecedented, that looked incredibly challenging, the philosophy that Gene Kranz applied when he was talking to, all of the different NASA controllers. You've probably all seen pictures of the mission control and all of those people. Firstly, failure was not an option. And then he kept asking one key question. When everyone would say, well, we can't do this and we can't do this and we can't do this. And his question was, what will make it possible? All the time, what will make it possible? Not it's impossible, not we can't do it, but what will make it possible? And with that underlying philosophy, he created the opportunity for them to get their crew home safely when they, so many other people said that it could not be done. And so I think when we look at the year that we're in, and I've had so many execs that I've been working with say, it's all too hard, we've got no resources, we don't know what to do, there's no recipe for how do I get from here to someplace in the future, and I don't know what it looks like. We just need to keep asking ourselves that question. So what will make it possible? What can we do? And continue to come at it from that perspective. And that creates the potential for performance. As soon as we go into a space of it can't be done, we can't create high performance. It just doesn't add up. So what I want to do today is to give you, I wanted to give you a frame in which to operate. Firstly, from a leadership perspective, and then from what's going in your organisations right now. So let me just share my iPad instead, and let's look at. So when I look at leadership, when I think about leadership, how do I be a good leader? How do I set myself up to be able to lead and to be able to lead high performance? There are three foundation. Oops, that's not a circle. Let me try again. There are three foundations that we need to look at, except my iPad isn't playing. So excuse me, I'm just going to try and get that restarted. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there are three foundations of leadership that we need to be thinking about all the time, particularly when we're looking at how do we make things possible, how do we create high performance, even when we're not in control of everything. And so those foundation elements are yourself. That's the first dimension of leadership, yourself. After that, everything else follows. The second dimension is your tribe, the people around you. That could be your team, your boss, your colleagues, your community, your family, who's in your tribe. And then the third key foundation element of leadership is your world. And that's the ecosystem in which you operate. So it might be all the systems and processes that make up your organisation. It might be the culture. It might be kind of the principles of how we do things around here, the types of behaviour that's acceptable or not acceptable. And then beyond your organisation, how your family operates, how your community operates. That's your ecosystem. And in those three spaces, if you're paying attention to them and you're focusing on your leadership in each of them, you create the opportunity to inspire, to influence, and to have impact, which in my experience, when I talk to leaders, those are the things they want to do. They want to inspire others to greatness. They want to influence them and help them, and support them to do, great things. And they want to make a difference. They want to have an impact. And when we do all of those things, that's when we're leading possibility. that's about more than just holding a title and sitting in a chair of a job role. That's about creating opportunity for the future. Does that make sense? Just kind of as a principle? Yeah. So that's kind of the frame that I want to talk in today, because I want you to just keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the concepts and look at, okay, so for myself, for my tribe, for my world, what does this mean? I was thinking about when Hima and I were talking about, how would we put this webcast together and talk about high performance during turbulence. So I was thinking about how do we talk about high performance in a way that's useful and simple and in a way practical. I like to take complex concepts and turn them into something that you can use rather than let's just talk about the theory. I want you to be able to take ideas away and actually put them into action. So what I was thinking about is let's look at high performance in the context of kind of the core human needs. And I imagine that many of you have come across the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I just want to use a very simple version of that to talk about how we can start to foster and support high performance in an organisational context. So, what are the basics of our human needs? Now, according to Maslow, the first thing that we need to worry about is our environmental needs, things like physical safety and food and shelter and that sort of thing. The second thing is psychological. And this is about our connection to the rest of our tribe. And the third thing is that then allows us to move into what is the meaning of our life and our purpose here on earth. And if we can satisfy those elements, then we live a fulfilled and high-performing life where we can achieve our potential. And that's been a generally accepted approach for a really long time. More recent work, though, from Pamela Rutledge, who's a psychologist, and also from Robert Enright, who's an anthropologist, has said, actually, we think some of that's the other way around. And so same key components, but what they've said is actually we think psychological safety comes first and then environmental. And the thinking and the idea behind that is that we need to be part of a community, part of a tribe in order to survive. If we don't have that, then in fact, forget the rest of it. Because you know what? Back in the day when we were hunting woolly mammoths, one person couldn't do that on their own. They needed a tribe to actually be able to make anything else happen. They needed to be part of a bigger group to be able to, function in any way that would lead to survival. So in fact, it's psychological and social connection that comes first. Then we move on to the environmental safety, and then we move into the meaning of life. So what I want to do today is to think about organisationally and for a high performance perspective, what can we do in each of these layers to foster that high performance potential? And there are three key ideas that I want to share with you. The first one is around that psychological social connection is the need to actually create that connection as a leader. So that's the first principle we're going to look at. The second principle is absolutely what do we need to do as leaders to create environmental safety and I guess the ability to operate organisationally. And the third one, of course, meaning how do we help people to find connection to purpose? so that they can be motivated, engaged, and actually contribute to this kind of high performance outcome that we're looking for. All right, so let's focus on this psychological space. Now, I said earlier, if I've got it here, that you need to, you have three key dimensions: yourself, your tribe, and your world. Now, I want to just, in particular, focus on your tribe. So there are three key things that you need to do as a leader to foster your tribe. They are to mentor your people, to model leadership, and to coach. And you need to do that each and every day. And when you do that, you're demonstrating your knowledge of leadership, you're showing leadership in action, and you're growing leadership. For your tribe. And that's a key responsibility that you have. Now, what I've noticed through this year in particular is, of course, people have wanted leadership. They've needed leadership. Everyone is looking for leadership. Doesn't matter what level you are, you want your leader to lead you. You want to have a level of certainty and trust in your leader, because if you don't, then everything else that has been chaotic and changing and, you know, unforeseen can be stressful and, you know, can create anxiety and make it so that I don't actually know what I should be focused on. But if I've got a leader to lead me through that, it creates certainty and it creates a level of stability that allows me to then contribute, you know, to be able to do my job, quite simply. So we need to, as leaders, be fostering that idea that we are actually leading. We need to be visible as leaders because we want our people to know that we are leading them, to feel like they're connected to us. If they don't feel like that, then when we ask them to do something, how likely are they to do that? So if I was to, and this is just a little way of kind of drawing where you might be. So the Visible Leadership Index, which I just realised you can't see, so let me just share that with you. Okay, this little index is about the progression of the level of visibility and connection that leaders can have with their people. And so it can be, particularly because we've had stages of lockdown and things like that, leaders can effectively be invisible to their people. If you're in different sites and you're not proactively creating the opportunity to be visible, then I think someone's got their mic on, actually. So what we want to do is we want to get ourselves into a position where our people feel like they are connected. Where people feel like they are actually able to connect to us. They feel like we're leading them, they have communication from us, and we're visible. And that creates trust and it creates connection. And then that gives us leverage. So when we need them to participate in change, when we need them to make a contribution, we can leverage on that connection that we have. And the reason that I bring this up is because a couple of things have happened. I spoke at the World Coaching Congress in October, and there was a real theme of that people were feeling less connected. You know, not from lack of intention or anything like that, but just the whole being on Zoom all the time, not being in the same place as their team over a long period of time has created a lessening of connection. And the other thing is that I read an article last week from Glint based on a couple of million engagement survey returns, which said that more than 30% of people are feeling less connected to their teams than they did in 2019. And nearly 40% of people are feeling less connected to their leaders than they were in 2019. And that's concerning, because if people don't feel connected, they don't want to contribute. And as a leader, that's a problem. Because if your people don't want to contribute and they're not engaged, how much discretionary effort are you going to get from them? Any ideas? Type it in for me. It's not positive.
I saw Pragati raise her hand. Pragati, do you have a question that you want to ask right now?
I didn't raise my hand. I think you just...
Okay.
I have a question here, Stacey. I feel is at times a vicious circle when suppose I am at a leadership position, at a senior position, responsible for delivery for the organization. I have a team of leaders working with me, or I am working with them to make them to deliver. Humanly, we have some comparisons in our mind between the various leaders, though we shall focus on their positive. We try to do that. Still, being a human being, at times we get engaged with a low performing leader, and there we slowly start disengaging with them. And the more we disengage, the more the problem goes on increasing and more disengagement. At times, how to remain focused to engage him more rather than getting more disengaged.
As the leader or as the team member?
As a leader.
Okay. I think there's a few responses there. I think the big thing that I would say this year is that leader energy has been challenged this year, and so that impacts engagement and motivation. And so one of the most important things that leaders need to do is to be filling their own cup, to actually be re-energizing themselves and looking at how do they do that and how do they be their best in a sustainable way. And so what are the things that you need to do to basically look after yourself so that you can maintain that, I guess, level of showing up at your best that you want to. Part of it is that. Part of it is going to be the things that I'm talking about. Being connected to purpose, being connected to your people are all going to add to your ability and willingness to remain motivated. So one of the keys to this, of course, is generally communication. Communication, if done in the right way, leads to connection. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you in particular is that this year what I've noticed around communication is that initially, COVID, oh my gosh, we've got all this responsive stuff we need to do. Organisations had to change dramatically. There was lots of things happening in terms of, edicts came down about what we could do and what we couldn't do, where we could go, where we couldn't go, all this sort of thing. And organisations and leaders responded, amazingly. And they were very communicative because we had a lot to get done in a really short space of time. But as time has gone by, that communication has kind of diminished. It hasn't gone away, but it's diminished. And so the feeling of connection has diminished. And communication has now become very task focused, a lot of it because of Zoom. So we get on to Zoom, we have a meeting, talk about the thing, and then we get off Zoom. There's no meeting people in the, to have a cup of coffee or talking to them as we walk to a meeting or any of those things that would typically happen. And so we're missing out on connection in that way. And the general level of communication about what is going on has diminished. And so as leaders, we need to be much more proactive about getting into a routine of communication. How do we keep people up to date with what the current situation is in a way that, is sustainable for us and for them? I'm just going to quickly read the chat. Okay, so I want to just share with you one of the principal models that I use when I'm working with my senior leaders to help them craft their messages really quickly and consistently. They need to focus on 4 key things that they want to share with their people. I'm just going to pop this next slide up and I'll talk it through. Don't worry about all the interior, just look at the four elements on the outside. When we're going through change and transformation, which is ongoing at the moment, 2020 is just the beginning, so we need to have a sustainable way of continuing to lead and continuing to communicate. So this is called the 4 Ps. The things that we want to let our people know consistently, so whether it's every week, fortnight, month, however you choose to do it, we need them to know the purpose of what we're doing. Why are we doing it? What makes it important? And so it could just be about survival, or it could be, that we're strategically we're changing direction. The second P is picture. What's the picture of where we're going? The end point. Now, the end point at the moment might be the end of the month because things change so quickly, or it might be 12 months' time. You determine the time frame that you want to operate in, but people need to know, where are we going? What does it look like when we get there? The third thing is the pathway. People want to know, how do we get there, wherever it is that we're going? What are the key steps along the way? Which is not, we need to have every minute detail in the plan. It's that they can trust that generally the direction of how we're going to move forward. And then the fourth thing that people really need to know is their part. What is the part you want me to play in this change process or transformation? What is it you need me to do, and how do I do that? How would you like me to participate? And so if you can communicate regularly with your people those 4 Ps, the purpose, the picture, the pathway, the part, people feel much more confident that you are actually leading them because you're being really proactive with your communication and clear. And they also feel more confident about how to join in. And that starts to create connection because you're being very visible, right? And they can trust in your leadership because you're clearly leading them because of the communication. Does that make sense? It's a really simple thing to do. And so I've had leaders this year who've gone, I don't have a lot of time. Like, I've got a really big team and I'm super busy. I don't have a lot of time. And I'm like, well, that's okay. Record a 2-minute video and get one of the people in your team or your assistant to share it out. It doesn't have to be, an hour's meeting. Just be quick and consistent. So what I would love to know, or what I would love for you to do right now, is to think about what is one thing that you could do to elevate your communication with your team. It could be peers, could be direct reports, could even be your boss. What is one thing that you could do to elevate your communication right now?
Stacey, we have a question from Om Prakash about communication. He's saying that how much or how often, that's the bigger challenge, and what message and what medium to use when communicating.
Yeah, okay, so we've kind of got the message. So I'll leave a couple of thoughts here. During times of change, which I would say, 2020 definitely falls into a time of change, people need to hear a message, receive a message 7 times before they retain it. 7. That's for a planned change. When we have an unplanned change, like the response we had to make this year, I imagine it's actually many more times than 7. So however much communication you were planning on doing, do more. That would be my first thing. The second thing would be that you do need to look at the different ways that you communicate. Everybody receives information differently. So think about those different modes. So video, email, audio, in team meetings, on the notice board, on the intranet, as many ways as you can deliver the same message, then do that, so that everybody has an opportunity to get it in the way that they actually like to receive information. And so I don't think I've ever seen or been involved with a change or an organisation where someone said, you know what, there was just too much communication. It just doesn't happen. We need to someone said to me, you need to communicate so much that you are sick of the message. You're so bored with it because you've processed it so many times. That's when you know that you're doing it enough. So I hope that's given you some thoughts about how often and that sort of thing. Right, so that's the communication piece, which I think is essential to building that kind of psychological safety and connection that people really crave. Gosh, look at the time. So let's get a wriggle on. What I want to do next is to share with you, as we go up from psychological safety to environmental, I want to share with you a different model, which is just about thinking about what are the key kind of foundations that we need to set up environmentally so that people know how to operate and have the conditions that, again, build that platform for performance. So I'm just going to draw again on my iPad. Except my iPad is, sorry folks, just being difficult. I think it's been used too much. This is my second event for this afternoon. So, all right. So this is about creating those core elements that we need to enable operations, really. So again, there are three dimensions. The first one that we need to think about, particularly as working conditions change, and that's about going into lockdown, not being in lockdown, working from home, some people back in the office, some people not in the office, all of those kinds of things, is we need to establish really clear protocols. And the protocols are, how do we actually operate? What systems do we use? What communication protocols do we have? How do we do, for example, I worked with an organisation earlier in the year, and they were like, our communication is out of control. We've got some people using Yammer, some people are on Skype, others are on MS Teams, someone's doing, and they hadn't actually made it clear, these are the systems we're going to use. When you want to contact or escalate a problem, this is how you do it. So it's all that kind of hygiene factors, if you like, in getting your environment set up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, from an environmental perspective, is we need to be really clear about the priorities. What are the priorities? Because they may well have changed since 2019, and they may well have changed since the beginning of the year, and they might be going to change again as we go into 2021. And by priorities, what I mean is, what is priority number 1? What is priority number 2? What is priority number 3? Not, we've got 10 priority ones. No, you don't. You have one priority one. Otherwise, how do you make a decision between should I do priority 1 or the other priority 1? We have to know clearly what are the priorities, and then we need to make sure that all the team, people in the team, know what the priorities are, so that if they have to make a decision, it's an informed one based on priorities. And then, of course, we've got our people. That's the third P. We need to make sure we've got the right people in the right roles. We need to make sure that they are supported, that they have the tools they need, that we are doing our people processes, we are recruiting, we are onboarding, we are giving feedback, we are having our one-on-ones, we're doing performance reviews. Like that, none of that should stop. It should keep going. If we want to achieve high performance, we've got to work with our people. And so what that means is, when we have the protocols in place, like how we actually operate, and we have clear priorities, then that means we can work towards delivery. We can actually do what we're here to do. from a team and a business perspective. When we have a clear way of working together with our protocols and we've got our people, then we've got connection. We know how to communicate, we know who to communicate to, that sort of thing. And then when we've got our people and we've got our priorities, we facilitate collaboration because everyone's working on the same agenda. Is that making sense? Yeah, and so that creates the opportunity for us to all focus and to work towards our high performance. We don't have those things in place. It's really hard to be efficient and effective. And so we have to structure an environment that enables people to actually do their jobs and feel supported. Let me just check in. Is this making sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think it gives a lot of perspective under especially challenging conditions like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with all of these things, and again, I've talked to my execs this year and organisations, is they did a really great job in the beginning of setting all this up, but they haven't revisited it, and yet conditions have changed. And they will continue to change. And so we have to revisit these things. So whether that's just put a little note in your diary that every 3 months we just check in and make sure, are our protocols right? Are our priorities clear? We got the right people? Are they doing what they need to do? And then we just continue to check in on that process so that we've, and we can adjust it and just make refinements, as we go. I think that as we move from what I've described 2020 as the sprint of change. And as we go into 2021, we're starting the marathon. We've got years now in front of us to feel the full consequences and benefits that have come out of the pandemic situation. And so as leaders, we need to be setting ourselves and our teams up for the marathon. Yeah, and so revisiting and refining is something that we just need to do on an ongoing basis, as well as our continuous communication. Okay, so now we've touched on building that kind of social connection piece. We've touched on a bit about setting up the environment to support our people. And now what I want to talk about is meaning. Which was this pointy end of the hierarchy. This again is super important. So a very clear theme has been coming through in all of the conferences that I've been attending over probably the last 2 months, and in talking with lots of leaders in lots of different organisations and industries, which is, as well as that kind of connection to each other sort of fading away a bit, is people's connection to purpose, the purpose of the organisation, the purpose of the team, is also, they're losing it. And the impact of that is this. So 100 people can do 100 people's work. Yes? Yeah? 100 disengaged people who don't have connection to purpose do the work of 68 people. And 100 people who have connection to purpose, are engaged and motivated, do the work of 151 people. So if you need to do more with less, if you need to tap into people's discretionary effort, then engagement, motivation, and connection to purpose are critical to that. Okay.
Some questions have come up, Stacey. Would you want to take that?
Yep.
Okay. Meenakshi is asking that how about managing expectations when you work in matrix-driven organizations with lots of work with cross-function teams? So how do you manage expectations in such an environment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the first thing I would say is you need to have a conversation about the expectations and agree them. So one of the things that I find is in these environments where we've got multiple masters, basically, is that there are a lot of assumptions about priorities, assumptions about who actually has responsibility, assumption about ability and capability. And so we actually need to have really clear conversations about what the expectation is and how we can meet it together. If we don't have the conversation about expectations, then we can never be disappointed about what happens because we didn't own the situation. So that's the number one principle I would say is you must have the conversation about the expectation. What else have we got?
There's a question from Avinash. It's asking how team can gain trust and competence of leader. How to gain trust and what leaders have to do for that.
Yeah, show up. Show up as a leader. Be a leader. Act like a leader. Make decisions like a leader. Learn and grow like a leader. Every day, try and be the best version of yourself. And so, in the model that I drew, let me go back to the beginning. Here, the model of leadership, where you've got yourself, your tribe, and your world. If you want to build, get people to trust in you as a leader, then you have to first lead yourself. It's like if I want to, if I choose a personal trainer, then I'm going to choose a personal trainer who looks and sounds and acts like a personal trainer. They look fit and healthy. They look after themselves. They have good philosophies, that sort of thing. And it's exactly the same for leaders. I am going to choose a leader. I'm going to choose to follow someone that I aspire to be like, that is acting like a leader, that is, developing themselves like a leader, that is showing up like a leader every day. So that would be the number one thing I think there is if you want people to trust you as a leader, then be one, and that means taking responsibility for your own learning and development and your presence and, and role modeling leadership and behaving, like a leader. Okay, so I'm kind of conscious of time, so I want to just share with you this last element, and then I'll come back to see how many more questions we can get through. So in terms of connection to purpose, as I said, this is really vital, and it's something that's been fading away this year, which is a problem. So the thing that I have found is people have kind of become, they don't understand how what they do makes a difference. So if they're kind of down the hierarchy or even, middle managers and that sort of thing, they don't understand how they do every day at work actually makes a difference to the organisation or the organisation's vision. And so it's our responsibility as leaders to help them to see that. So every organisation, hopefully, has purpose, a reason for being. Yeah. And then that translates into a number of things. I'm just going to make sure I've got enough layers here. Oops, that's a terrible line. Okay, hopefully I've drawn enough lines. All right, so most organisations have a vision, and it comes out of their purpose. So it's their aspiration. So their vision is in the next 5 years or the next 10 years, this is what we aspire to be as an organisation. And most people can probably quote the vision of their organisation. Yeah? Who knows the vision of their organisation? Show of hands. Few? Yeah, a few. Okay. And then we have a strategy. That's what comes next. And our strategy is typically, a few years, maybe a 5-year strategy, which says this is what we're going to do to move us towards the vision. And then we have a business plan. And a business plan might be a 1 to 2 year plan of, how we achieve the strategy, and then we have, some programs or projects, the specific pieces of work that we're actually going to do. And so now we're definitely getting into the 12-month phase. And from that, we have perhaps a team plan, a team set of deliverables, if you like. This is called the corporate cascade, by the way. Oops, can't spell, cascade. And so from the team plan, now that I know what the team plan is and I know what the team goals are, I have an individual plan and an individual set of goals, right? Oops, individual plan and goals. All right, I might even have a performance plan that represents that. And most organisations have some kind of a process that represents this. And then we have daily activity, what I actually do each day. And so if everything was working, what would happen is the purpose informs the vision, and the vision informs the strategy, which informs the business plan, the programs, the team plan, my personal plan, and what I do every day. Let me ask this though, how many people get to the end of the day and think, I did everything I set out to do today? How often would that happen? Not very often. Often what happens is people do stuff. Some of it will be planned, some of it won't be planned, but they don't know how they made a difference because there actually isn't clear connection between their daily activity and the vision and purpose. So they don't know how they contribute and they don't know what value they add. And so they lose connection to purpose. If they lose connection to purpose, they become less engaged and less motivated because they don't feel like they make a difference. And so one of the easiest things that we can do as leaders is actually help them to make that connection. And part of it is actually making sure that the plan, their plan and their daily activity is actually focused on the right stuff. Not just reacting to something that happened in the moment, but making sure that they're actually focused on the right things. And that is actually contributing to what the organisation's about. I worked with a bank a few years ago, and one of the things that they actually instituted was they were changing the direction of the bank and they were making it very customer-centric and that sort of thing. And they introduced this process so that every single person at the end of the day had to do some self-reflection on their day, which was something like, how did I help the customer today? Because that was the purpose that they were very focused on. And so by doing that, they started to re-establish the connection with what was important. And people could see how they were directly contributing to that very important thing. Does that make sense? Yeah? So one of the things that you can do as a leader is to start to establish is helping that connection, helping people to see what they do every day and how it relates to the overall business. And so that might be something else that you can think about for your team and your people, how you can facilitate that. I'm just going to have a quick look at some of these big questions that have come up.
Stacey, we have 5 minutes to go, almost 5 to 6
Yes.
minutes. Hate to interrupt.
Okay. That's okay. I'm watching the time as well. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Bhaskara. That's true. So, Zareen, I don't have time to coach, or I don't have the skills to coach. Hear from leaders. responsibility that many, look, I would agree, Serena, but I think there's a huge opportunity for us to educate leaders about what coaching is and to help them to recognise the opportunity that coaching brings. I think you're right. I read a study not so long ago that said that most leaders who think they're coaching, about 80% of those people don't actually understand what coaching is. And so they're not great at it, but that's okay because a little bit of training can make a massive difference to that. And so there's the potential to have huge impact for them and their teams by introducing some of those concepts.
I saw Raman was raising hand. Would you like to unmute yourself? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was looking at this concept of commitment and corporate hurdle. I don't think corporates do like this philosophy, but the hurdle business works in rugby, it works in football, it works in cricket. So the point here is I consider everybody part of the team as one who can contribute. It's not one goal scorer, there are 12 goal scorers. So I probably think commitment and the understanding at the grassroots level will make things happen. Stacey, I'm just trying to complement what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
We have a question from Varun. He's asking, how do you keep people engaged in a fast-growing organization where expectation and directions might be changing every 2 to 3 months? So how do you keep people engaged?
I think that's where the communication and the ongoing conversation, using those 4 Ps, is essential. So, you know, if we're changing the strategy and we're changing the direction, then we need to be really clear about what makes that important on that purpose piece. So I think if we just do it without a reason why or without sharing the reason why, people can quite easily become disengaged. So it just becomes imperative to have the ongoing conversation and really involve people in that and let them know how they can contribute and be part of it. And I think the other thing that really plays to that is let's help people understand what their strengths are and then how they can bring them to apply to whatever it is that's going on for the organisation right now. Having said that, there will be some people who are not comfortable with that kind of dynamic, and that's perfectly fine. But we just need to help them to understand how they can either work with it more effectively or choose something that's a better fit for them. Okay, so we've touched on the 3 levels of the hierarchy in terms of psychological safety, creating the right kind of environment, and also, you know, meaning and purpose, meaning making and purpose. And I think if you can make inroads into each of those elements with your team, then you're laying the foundations to sort of sponsor that high performance opportunity. If you don't get the foundations right, you're never going to create a high performance opportunity. So it's about having the right building blocks and continuously refining them. And leading your people, you know, really stepping up and leading on an ongoing basis to be able to, so that they can see it and they can feel it and they can choose to follow you. Shall I hand back to you, Hima?
Yeah, I think so many takeaways in the last 60 minutes. I was scribbling on my notepad and there's so many things that we've taken away. I think starting with the framework for leading possibilities, the 3 foundations you spoke about, inspire, influence, and impact. I think that was beautiful in itself for us to go deeper and reflect upon. The new look to hierarchy of needs, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs having changed, I think that was beautiful. You know, the way you said that the environment is what actually, you know, the psychological reasons have actually become the base needs, and then you have the environment and the meaning. And how to build a tribe, I think great takeaways there, how to build a tribe, the framework that you showed there, the leadership index and the corporate cascade, also about communication and building trust. I think so much, we would have loved to keep you going and going, you know, but yes, in looking at the time that we had scheduled, I think it has been so much to reflect on. And the questions that you posed as a coach, I think each one of us should attempt those questions. How to build more connection, how to improve our communication, what is going to be our plan for that, action plan for that. I think it makes sense to reflect post the session and do that. And as I said before, this is just the beginning of our interaction and learning. And the session would be followed by 7 days hand holding with Stacey is going to be there. So don't worry, you can continue asking your questions. The questions you can keep posting and we will try to address them as we go along. So my request to you is, in case you haven't shared your phone number, your WhatsApp number, please put that in the chat box along with your name so that I include you in case I missed you in the group. So add your name as well as your WhatsApp number. We'll put you in the group and the learning will continue going. And thank you so much. I think we finished just on time. That is great. So you're all free to enjoy your Sunday. My special thanks and gratitude once again from all of us to Stacey for taking out time in the weekend and for sparing her thoughts and giving amazing insights on leadership. Thank you. Any parting words, guys? Please feel free to add. We are at 12:31 now. So
thank you, Stacey.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah. Yes, Stacey, please.
I just saw something come up saying my books aren't available on Amazon India. They are. So if anyone's looking.
Oh, okay, I'll check. I tried yesterday. It wasn't being shown. It was showing being said in
Stacey,
Australia.
you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry,
I
was
checked
just saying my books.
It was available. It was available in Australia, not in India.
It is available on Amazon India. They've been specifically added to the Amazon India site.
First, lead yourself. You're talking about that.
So what's your other book?
Okay. Thank you guys. So we will continue to be in touch. Anything more, Stacey, you wanted to add? Please go ahead.
Yeah,
No, look, I just appreciate all the questions, and I think if you can just, as Hima said, take even one thing away and take action on it, then that's a great outcome. I'm going to pop into the comments the names of both of my books because there's a few questions coming up there. The New Leader is one and First Lead Yourself is the other. They're both on Amazon India, but what I might do, Hima, is I will shoot you the link for Amazon India and then you can share it.
Absolutely, please do. I'll do that. So anyone who is not added on the WhatsApp group, please share your name and number and I will take that from the chat. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for logging in and have a lovely Sunday. Thank you so much. Thank you, Stacey. Wonderful having you.
thanks everyone.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Hima.
Thank you, Hima. Thank you, Hima, ma'am.
Thank you, Stacey and Hima. Nice session. I never knew it is 60 minutes gone. I thought Stacey had just started 5 minutes back. That was the strength of the session.
Excellent.
All right, so we are good to go. Just share your number in case you haven't. I'll take it down from the chat. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.